Good morning, and thank you all for coming this morning. My plan is to talk for about 30 minutes, which should allow us plenty of time for a discussion. Just want to tell you a little bit about START, because probably no one in this room heard of it before you got the introduction. So the title is a National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism. However, like Mike said, my research program looks at all hazards. START was funded after 9/11. So after 9/11, the US government realized maybe we should do some research on counterterrorism and terrorism. It's the only research center out of the 10 that were funded that focuses on non-terrorism threats as well and looks at social and behavioral research. It's also a huge education and training center. So we have an online graduate certificate. Anyone interested in the room, people around the world do take it. We have an undergraduate major. Right now in the summer, we have 200 interns at our headquarters. So we do a lot of education. We estimate that we've trained about 3,000 undergraduate students in the past 5 years. You can see the different research groups. Pretty much all of them say terrorism all over them besides us. We do have some study abroad programs actually here. And there'll be some students from Australia coming to take a class from me in 2 weeks. And we have a training and risk and crisis communication program, which is the only one funded by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, accredited by them, that focuses on risk and crisis communication. So it's a pretty large portfolio of research and education work. Okay, now what you really came for, not the spiel about START. So I have 3 sections of my presentation. This is basically an overview of the research we've been doing over the past 2 years that focuses on social and mobile media as a risk and crisis communication platform. I'm going to start talking about social media use before and during disasters. I'm going to present 2 experiments we've done that explain the behaviors and non-behaviors surrounding social media use. Then I'm going to move in to talk about mobile media. That's a big push right now with the government in the US, is how do we get messages to people in the moment they need them, so on their mobile devices. So I'm going to talk about some of the surveys, focus groups, and experiments we've done around those. And then I conclude talking about some recent work we've done about journalists' perceptions of the role of social media. We know from global pandemics, for example, that about 99% of the information on social media during a disaster comes from the media, not emergency managers. So it's important to know how the media cover these disasters so we can maybe tap into that with what we do as emergency managers. All right, part 1, social media before and during disasters. So I want to talk first about some research we did on the CDC, Center for Disease Control's Zombie Apocalypse campaign. Has anyone seen this campaign? It launched in 2012. Okay, see some heads, nodding heads. So this was incredibly popular around the globe. I'm actually going to show you some media coverage here in Australia of this campaign. The gist was to tap into popular culture. So this launched in 2012. Walking Dead at first premiered around there. Zombies were huge in the US, and not as huge anymore, but they were the big thing in US popular culture at this time. So the CDC said, let's spend no money, but get an intern and 1 staffer to create an online campaign that says if you're prepared for a zombie apocalypse, you're prepared for anything. So using the exact same messaging we've always used, get a kit, make a plan, be prepared, but put a zombie spin on it to make people a little more interested, make it a little more sexy and exciting to do emergency preparedness. Here's how the campaign launched. A blog post with a tweet. Prepared for a zombie apocalypse. If so, you're prepared for any emergency. Learn more, CDC Public Health Matters blog. This blog is still live if you actually want to go and take a look at what they did. It's an ongoing campaign. All right, so immediately, this goes crazy. It's the top 10 Twitter trend globally around the world. Exceeds 60,000 blog page views per hour within 3 days, up from 80 prior to launching this campaign. Their website actually crashed in the first 10 hours, so they had to go up and fix it. People are just going crazy saying, I didn't even know the CDC was on Facebook. Before the zombie warning, I didn't even know the CDC was on Facebook. Great idea to get people informed about actual emergency preparation. For this case study, we interviewed the single campaign staffer who ran this campaign. She gave us their insights in terms of what they think worked. And then we also did an experiment. So let me give you a little more about what happened. There was more than 3.67 billion total impressions in terms of media coverage. Wall Street Journal. In Australia, I found actually at least one article in the Sydney Morning Herald every year talking about this campaign. So kind of linking this campaign to current events. So it still has really resonated even here in Australia. So this sounds pretty amazing, right? Sounds successful, kind of like your dream situation. All right, so we thought so too. This has gotten a lot of traction. People hold it up as the ideal way to do social media in the US. We thought, well, maybe we should make sure that's right. People are saying this is what you should do, let's test it. So we did an experiment. And we wanted to see, was this so successful because it went on social media? Was it the fact that it was a Twitter and the blog that made it pop? Or was it the humor? Or was it both? What's happening here? So in our experiment, we found that it didn't seem to be traditional. It wasn't the social media. So we did an experiment. People got the same message, Facebook, Twitter, or a website post. No matter how people got the information in our experiment, they responded the same. So it did not seem to be, it was the information, not necessarily how people received it. Then we took a look at the humor messaging, the zombies. In our experiment, we gave them the message without the zombie, message with the zombie. What happened was actually people reported higher intentions to prepare a kit, get a plan, seek further information without the zombie preparedness. Humor had a negative impact on preparedness behavior. This is an experiment, so they're reporting what they think they would do, not what they actually did. But I think it's an important lesson learned. So the humor seems to be fabulous for eyeballs on a campaign, and you cannot discredit that. The fact that people even know about this information and knew about the CDC is really huge. But when you actually want people to do actions, humor does not seem to be cutting it in terms of getting people to actually pay attention to the message as opposed to the agency. Here's another experiment we've done. Again, in this one, we're looking at what is it about social media that's so hot. Here we wanted to test the source. So is it a federal government source that matters in an emergency? Is it a local government? So we did FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and the San Francisco Mayor's Office for this experiment. Is it the media source? If we do a national media, USA Today has the largest circulation in the US, so we picked that one. And then the local paper, San Francisco Chronicle. Is it Twitter? Is it Facebook? What happens if people get a message from these various combinations? Do they respond more appropriately if they get it from FEMA, via Facebook, via Twitter, San Francisco Mayor's Office, USA Today? We get the idea. So we like to call this finding, don't jump on the social media bandwagon. We found here again that the medium did not matter. Whether people received the message from Facebook, Twitter, didn't matter. Source didn't matter either. So whether they received it from FEMA, San Francisco Mayor's Office, USA Today, San Francisco Chronicle, it didn't matter. What matters? The message. So it's the actual content of what's getting sent out is motivating people to take protective action. It doesn't matter as much how they receive the information. We tested this in a terrorism context, also a fire context, so a severe fire. And we found the exact same results. So the idea that people need to know what to do matters less. Now, of course, if you get it via Twitter and you're facing the fire right now, that's good because you got it right now. So the speed and all that certainly makes a difference. But in terms of how people process the message, there's nothing sexy per se about social media. It's not because it's on social media, people are following it. It's the message that resonates with people. It's going to get people to take action. I mean, you shouldn't use social media, but when I talk to emergency managers in the US, they like this, because it doesn't mean they have to be on every single channel. They need to focus more on the channels that matter most to their stakeholders and really focus on the information more. We did find some couple differences in terms of how people process information in an emergency. So regardless of where they got it, who they got it from, I've talked to some Australian colleagues here, same findings, females respond, males don't. So females are more likely to evacuate if they're told to tell other people to evacuate, to follow government information, to look for more information. What do you think males are more likely to do than females? There's only one thing our experiments have found that males are more likely to do than females.
Have another beer.
Have another beer? Okay, you're pretty close. Passive behavior. That's anyone else want to have a guess?
Stay in the area.
Stay in the area, okay.
Protect.
That would be lovely. Look at YouTube videos. Now, that's better than just have a beer. Maybe having a beer with the YouTube videos. I would put that past American males. So, I mean, it's good they're actually looking for information. We were glad that we found them doing something, but they're not actually taking behaviors that are recommended by the messaging, and they're not telling other people, and they're not looking for a lot of extra information. So we know we have this gap in terms of males and getting them to respond. We need more information and research on how do we tip them to response. Maybe it's the females tell them to respond, possibly.
There's an implication there, combined with something else you said
Yep.
earlier, that the reason that social media is so successful is that people are used to it.
Yep.
And the message just slots into their normal
Exactly.
approach. They don't necessarily respond
Exactly.
to what's in it.
Right.
So that the uptake is basically just because we're comfortable using it.
Right, you're on
there's another
Facebook, you're
one.
on
Oh,
Twitter.
isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Now I'll move on to the next beer.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So maybe they're not on the sites where they're getting the information. And we do know when if you all have like Facebook sites or Twitter sites, you can track the demographics of who your followers are. It does tend to be females. So maybe females have made this more a part of their daily life in terms of following information from emergency managers and emergency services. Another trend we're finding in the US is that older adults are much like females. They do what the government says. They listen for more information. They evacuate if they're told to, and they tell other people to evacuate or take whatever the protective action may be in the given disaster. What do you think younger people in the US do? There's only one thing they tend to do more often than older adults. Okay, check out the networks. Other guesses?
Share information.
Share information, okay. Your face says you have a guess.
I was thinking Snapchat or something.
Okay, okay. Blame the government. Not a good finding for the US government, right? So they're actually not more likely to do anything. We thought too, when we did this research, oh, they're gonna be liking Facebook, they're gonna be retweeting. No, the older adults are actually doing more of that. What they're doing is saying, government, why didn't you save me? It's your fault. And so that is a huge gap in the US. A lot of emergency managers have seen social media as a way to reach the younger adults. That's why the whole zombie apocalypse campaign was launched, to get the younger adults. Social media is not going to be the magic bullet. That's not going to solve the why aren't the younger adults engaging with us. There needs to be something else done in that regard. All right, so turning, bless you, to the imminent threats. So in the US, we have something called the WEA program, or the WEA service, Wireless Emergency Alerts. These came out of Hurricane Katrina, where people didn't get the information quick enough to make an informed decision. Obviously, they didn't evacuate because they didn't have the funding and other reasons to evacuate, but the thought was that if you get the message to people in their pockets, they might respond better. And so this is part of the WARN Act. It came out of Katrina, but actually didn't go live until 2012. So this program started in the US in 2012, in April, and my research team started researching it in August 2012. And they thought, now that it's live, let's see if it's working. Maybe you might want to test that before you go live, but they wanted us to see whether these messages work. Do they get people to take action? If not, how can we tweak them to make it better? So this is a public-private partnership. All the wireless carriers have bought into this. It's a 90 characters message. So you think tweet short, 90 characters, including spaces, so everything. And that's all you get. Now the benefit is it's an opt-out program, so you automatically get it unless you go and opt out. It's pretty hard to figure out how to opt out. So pretty much everyone gets it. It's geo-targeted, so you get it if you're in the area of threat. So when you travel, if you guys came to the US and you had a smartphone, you would get it. So it gets everyone. It also has a very loud sound. So it comes onto your screen. If your phone's turned off, it gets you. So you can't ignore it, essentially. So with a lot of commuters and people like that, they were concerned that people aren't getting alerts when they need them. To use this as an emergency manager, you just have to go through some training, and there's an automated system where you basically punch in who you are, and there's an acronym that's already assigned to you. You have to put what time you want to send this out, and you get to pick as many protective actions as you want. The language is already pre-approved, but you can put whatever you want in the 90 characters that you can fit. Here's a sample one. Tornado warning in this area until 6:30 p.m. Take shelter, check local media, so that one has 2 protective actions. And then National Weather Service, NWS.
Did you test the way that message is structured? So
Yes.
that hazard comes first?
So I'm showing you, this is what currently is mandated.
Yeah.
And we tested,
Oh, you
is that the right order?
After it went in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because obviously we have emergency alert, which is a similar system. But it's just about, well, what order do you put things in? What's most important, especially
Exactly.
if you get, ours is 160 characters, and I think that's short. But then when you went 90, I thought, ooh, that's really short. So I'd be interested to see what you.
Next slide.
Okay, nice segue.
Yep. So here's your current hazard, location, time, and the time is when the message expires. So that's a little confusing because most people want to know actually when you should stop doing something, but it's when the message expires, protective action, and then who is this coming from? Only one source allowed too, so that's probably relevant. All right, so our prime research question was, is this the best way to order the content? No, it's not. So, and I should say we did experiments. We tested 140 character messages too, and 1,380 characters. That's the maximum message you can put out in the US in emergency services. So I'll tell you some of the findings comparing the short with the longer too, but this is just for the short. All right, so what seems to work best is source. Probably because people aren't aware of these. There wasn't a lot of public education about this. So people get this thing sometimes at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning, and they're like, what the heck is this? A little stronger language, usually. And so people now want to know who this is coming from, because they think it's spam. Probably over time, when there's more awareness of what this is, that probably won't be as concerning. But right now, they want to know, is this a joke? So source first. Then, so this is imminent threat. It's supposed to be only a couple of hours, 2 minutes. What should I do? That seems pretty important. This thing is waking me up or kind of scaring me. What's my protective action? Then hazard. Location last, since I'm getting it, so it kind of applies to me, so I really don't need the location that much. And time, but people want to know the time the message expires, not, or the time the action expires, not the time the message expires. You can send out as many of these as you want in a hazard, so oftentimes people are getting 3 or 4. So that's when it becomes even more confusing because the hazard the protective action might be changing over time, and they have these multiple messages with different actions, and it can become very confusing. But that's what our experiments are showing: source, protective action, hazard, location, and time. And we did test these for tweets and for 1,380, and we found the same findings as well. So it does, this order does seem to work across. But again, in the US, emergency services is not very well known. People don't know the acronyms. And so if you guys have better brand recognition, source might not need to go first. No, no such luck? Okay, wishful thinking. All right, so what didn't work for these short messages? In terms of complex hazards, so we tested these in an improvised IND attack, improvised nuclear detection. Then we did tsunami, we did severe fire, and we did tornado. And then we did a flood, and I'll show you that next. We did survey an actual community that had a flood. So these are across lots of hazards we wanted to test to see, you only have one order, you can't change it via hazard, so does that work? Or do you need to have different information? We kind of thought if people don't know about the hazard, they probably need a different order than if they know about the hazard. And we did find that. So we found out for the longer messages, 1,380 characters, and that's the max you can put out any kind of alert in the US, so that seemed wise to test. It doesn't matter what order you put in these long messages. You got space for everything. There's no effect. And so when you have these really long messages, it doesn't matter as much whether source is first, protective action, hazard, the whole thing's there. But shorter, 140 tweets, and these we as 90. For hazards people knew very little about, particularly our IND and then a tsunami, because tsunamis are not very common in the US. It wasn't enough information. And so it functions more like a siren than a warning. It tells people something bad is going on, and they tend to go look for other information. They don't actually take action. And so the research in the US, usually the process people go through when they get a warning is first they want to know what it is, then they want to personalize it to make sure it actually affects to them. And that's where it seems to break down, is the personalization. They don't think it actually affects them, so they look for other information. Ideally, you want people to understand, personalize, take action. So that's what we as are trying to do, is to kind of skip that look for other information and decide phase. It's not doing it yet. So actually, we've gotten some additional funding, and we're testing now 280 characters. That's the max you can see on a screen of a cell phone. That's why we picked that. We just finished experiments 2 weeks ago. I'm cleared to tell you what the findings are yet, but I can tell you it's very promising. And we were able to actually make the 280 perform more like the 1,380 character messages. So it is able to have enough to have people personalize. So that seems to be kind of a sweet spot to get it just a little bit longer to get people to take action. We also tested maps and URLs to see if you could get extra content there. I can't tell you the findings, but they're not too happy. I can tell you that we were able to find much effect with the maps and the URLs, so that doesn't seem to be promising, which is unfortunate. Other things we found, so we did do some focus groups with these as well before we did our experiments. In the US, people didn't know what WEAs were, and they didn't know basic emergency management concepts. So, for example, one of the protective action was shelter in place, and people said, well, should I shelter here or should I go to a shelter? Well, that's a pretty different action. Some people asked if this was Santa Claus, if WEAs were so like mystical and unbelievable, they didn't even believe this was possible. They didn't think that you could get an alert on your cell phone. So just the whole idea that it gets to you where you are is very unbelievable in the US. We have lots of people too talking about acronyms. They're like DHS, Denver House Service, Department of Homeland Security. So even on not being aware of the major players in emergency management, we saw it with the National Weather Service as well, like north by west south, people would say. So huge lack of understanding of emergency management, which is obviously makes it very troublesome to do these. However, so we did test these in an actual community that got them outside of the lab. This is a 100-year flood event in Boulder, Colorado. It's a big university town in the west. The first protective action was check local media. And so we did find that about a third of our survey respondents, after they got the first WEA, there was a 50% increase in what the WEA told you to do. Now, check local media is pretty passive. I doubt it would have been so big if it was, evacuate horizontally. But it does show that the WEAs can be effective. We're currently testing them in other hazard types to see if we see that huge uptake when it's not a passive action like check local media. But it's pretty powerful results, and we talked to the National Weather Service folks. They're really brand ambassadors for this campaign. They give you case studies where there was floods and people saw it and evacuated and lives were saved. There's other examples where that doesn't happen, but it does seem to have an effect. And this is really the future of alerts and warnings in the US, the idea that we can get it to your pocket immediately where you are. Just got to figure out how to do this a little bit better. This is my last section, and I'll be more than happy to take questions and comments. So this is kind of emerging research, but like I teed off in the beginning, we know that from global research from H1N1, for example, that 99% of the content in Twitter was from journalists, not emergency managers. And we see this time and time again. And so we were curious, okay, so most of the people are retweeting and tweeting journalism content. What are the journalists covering? How can we get more of the emergency services content in there? We interviewed 40 journalists that covered at least one crisis in the past year. These are broadcast journalists, local, but all in the US. But we did get the major, like CNN and major broadcasts as well as local. Not too surprising, they saw social media for basically alerts and warnings. So breaking news, safety news, to really telling the public what to do. They saw traditional media for deep storytelling. They're not seeing social media as a way to tell the story of the crisis, more to tell people what to do. So not a two-way dialogue, just getting important safety information out very quickly to the public. They also saw it as a way to advertise their own content. So tell people, tune in to the evening broadcast or check out my blog post. There was a big concern about speed and accuracy, so there's a lot of discussion about the ethics, and many people were seeing that social media is basically corroding the field of journalism. And what they really wanted was more information from emergency managers. They said if we could get verified information online, it'd be so much easier than having to go find it ourselves. And so they said a lot of emergency managers in the US have no presence on social media because they're responding to the emergency. But if they had more presence, they would be able to be much more accurate and timely, and more importantly, be able to get accurate health and safety news. So it was just a big kind of call to action that we wish we had more emergency services, verified information, not on people's websites, but literally on the social media channels, so we can grab it and retweet it very quickly and not go look for it somewhere else. I think that's pretty intuitive, but it was good to hear at least a strong interest from them to have that content. So what I think are the key takeaways from the research I've presented today: setting your risk communication objective. Is it to tell people about your agency, the CDC, or is it to get people to take action? What are you trying to do? And that should really frame your approach. Audience deficiency. So we've seen, females seem to do very well, not so much for males. I didn't present today, but we've done research on different racial and ethnic groups in the US, and we see huge disparities as well in terms of the social media and taking action. African Americans actually are more likely to respond via information from social media than Caucasians, which is counterintuitive to what you might think. So it is important to look at the different audiences and see how they're responding. messages matter. So it's not just, I get on the new popular social media and my problems are solved. It really is getting that message correct and getting it to where people are, but not just getting where people are. There's specific message areas to improve. So in the US, most of our research is not on messages. So we kind of assume you do the message thing right, and we research how to get it out. And so we do need a lot more research on how to actually get the message right. And so the kind of the key takeaway from most of which we do is the messages matter more than the medium and the source. So it really is that basic message itself. That's me. If you want to find me, the Research Center has a very active Facebook group, Twitter feed, and we put on research backgrounds when there's a major terrorist threat around the world. So probably aren't interested in terrorism, but we do a lot of transitioning of our research. A lot of our research is free online. We do 1 to 2 page briefs of all of our findings. And my group does do non-terrorism research as well. But if you want to check us out, that's where we are. Thank you very much.
Questions? I'll be surprised if all the questions are asked during the...
I've got one around the zombie problems and the impact of humour being less, impactful in terms of actually delivering action. Did you guys look at the impact of just the cumulative mass of, translating? Well, we've got more eyeballs to see, so we might only be translating 10% of people actually doing something, but that results in 200,000 more people actually doing the action.
Yeah, that's possible because we tested an experiment, so it really was just doing the kind of the prediction. But yeah, I think in terms of brand awareness, their research clearly shows that people found out about it and sustained. I've been doing it for 3 years, and it's so popular. The governor of Kansas declared October zombie preparedness. So it's this is 3 years after the campaign. And September is National Preparedness Month, so that means 2 months preparedness back to back. So I think it definitely has gotten lots of eyeballs and gotten people talking about it. And I think that we can't belittle that, but you can't test that. But yeah, not to say it's not this is successful.
Yeah.
I was really interested about the men demographic and whether it was to do if you screened at all for technological aptitude.
We did, yeah.
And what did that show?
It showed, which is what the U.S. trends. If you look at the Pew Center for American Life project, they do a lot of national polling, and it basically shows that females are more social media savvy than males, but males are increasing over time. So there used to be a big divide in terms of interest. I don't know if it's savvy, interest in social media. It's becoming more on par.
And was there a kind of age group that was particularly a deficit in that area?
So when we ran our analysis, we controlled for all of that, so the findings pull out for that. But the older adults across the board were less likely to use social media, but more likely to follow the message. And it didn't matter where they got the message from. So I think the key lesson is, are they tuned in to any of your messages anywhere? Are they following on your website? Are they listening to any advertisements you have? Are they going to community centers? If they're getting your message, they're more likely to respond. But yes, but if you look at Facebook, for example, the quickest growing demographic around the world is this 65 and older crowd. It's actually not a cool, like my college students, like Facebook. Oh, my parents do that. You do that. I'm not going to be on there. So I think, you will see segments of different groups on different sites, and that is a good way to try to reach them as well.
Just by way of comment initially, this is reflected by the Sony Music audience label. They have the same findings across different demographics. Psychoanalysis of age groups and gender. In terms of conversion, did you study that?
In terms of conversion
from social media to action, did you have a look at that in account?
We have not. So if people follow you on, do they actually take action?
Yeah.
What you're asking. Yeah. We've mainly study this in the lab, so we haven't looked at over time tracking in terms. But the CDC gave us access to their internal research, and it did show that about 50% of the people that followed them during this campaign are still following them via Twitter. So that's pretty impressive conversion, right? So I do think that these attention-getting campaigns. We talked to emergency managers in the U.S. to a negative event, obviously, for people who lose their lives and families or houses. They have a higher conversion rate as well. But ideally, you get them before it has some kind of negative event.
mentioned that a number of organisations feel as if social media or Facebook and such like are the way to get at the younger cohort, but your study is showing that that's unsuccessful. Where are they going to?
So I think in the US, and probably has their guests here in Australia, it's the sense that I'm invisible. So I'm too young for anything bad to happen. Plus, we don't have a lot of mega disasters in the US, so they don't have kind of that personal experience with disasters as much as they might in other locations. So I think they're not going anywhere. A lot of what we do in the US is we try to do clubs in high schools and in colleges to kind of get people involved at that level. But I think that they just feel like they're invisible and they're not going to go anywhere, which is unfortunate. So I think it's really getting them involved in the community or where they are, getting their parents. We do a lot with elementary students too, US. So FEMA has an entire curriculum that's in a box for you to use in your 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 4th grade, primary school. And so we do a lot at that level as well, but it's harder for us at the high school and the college level.
If I could follow on. Another demographic that people find very difficult to access are those people where both members of the household, but there's only 2 members of the household and both are working, so there's no children to get messages through. How's that demographic responding?
So I think that's why we have the WIA system in the US, honestly, because that perfectly describes a lot of urban areas in the US. Single family or single household, 2-person household, no children, nothing to access them. So that's why they launched the WIA, because basically you don't have any choice. It's coming right to you. I think after that, one of the things I didn't show, when we were doing the experiments, the Boston bombing actually happened. So we paused data collection since we were looking at hypothetical bombing as well as a fire, and we found that people that reported paying attention to the media coverage of the Boston bombing were more likely to take all the actions we studied for a fire and for a bombing incident. So I think maybe following on a recent hazard crises, whether they're actually the one that you're trying to get people to respond to or not, can have a positive effect. I know the Red Cross in the US, when there's a house fire, they canvass about 5 city blocks around it and start passing out information about fires because you just saw your neighbor's house burn down. So you're a little more open to actually preparing yourself. I think taking advantage of tragedies, unfortunately, is one way to do this.
Sorry, I just have another question in relation to the temporal aspect of this, whether there was a time prior to the event happening that's maximum, like optimum, to put the messages out.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we've been looking into recently. We haven't done the analysis yet, but yeah, I think there is going to be a window of opportunity. Too early, people aren't going to pay attention to it. Too late, a lot of the research says people want to hear, smell, or see the risk before they actually respond. So one of the questions are, can we do that through social media? They can't smell it yet, but they can certainly hear and see it. And so I have a PhD student, for example, right now is testing different images. And what do you show to get people to show action? How quickly do you show the images? So kind of getting at that, how can we motivate them to do something before an actual incident?
And to follow on from that, in terms of how people process cognitively when they get closer to a risk and start to undergo stress.
Yeah. So there's research that shows that generally speaking, in a routine time, negatives and positives are the same. So 1 negative, 1 positive, the same. In a crisis situation, we need 3 positives to outweigh a negative. So the media are showing very negative things. We need to have 3 messages telling people protective actions, for example, for them to process this. That's what the psychological research that we just become overload with stress. And usually we can, it's a one-on-one level, but we see all the media framing bad, 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 bad. We need 3 positive actions to take action. So it is a pretty severe detriment we have to overcome. Research also shows that within 10 seconds, something's posted on Twitter, a crisis happens. So that's pretty concerning timing as well. And so being able to have templates and messages you can get out there sooner is always helpful. It's on average going to be posted by someone experiencing it within 10 seconds. Not the media, but the actual person experiencing it.
Yeah, have you examined the role of false positives on diminishing the reputation of the alert system?
So, that's a great question. There's a National Weather Service call for that right now. So our National Weather Service, put in your Bureau of Meteorology.
Yeah.
It's funding that right now. They have a whole grant proposal, so we're putting in to apply for that.
Yeah, because I get the sense from the community in rural and regional Victoria that there is an issue at the moment about the number of false positives, which then lead to them dismissing it.
Yeah. So the research record is very mixed.
Yeah.
So you'll find half a dozen studies that say it matters, half a dozen that don't. So there really isn't any consistent finding, and it doesn't seem to matter hazard type or familiarity. It really doesn't seem to be something they can measure yet, and that's why the National Weather Service wants more research on it. What they're having us, the call is for, look at communities that get hazards a lot. So they're more concerned about the false alert when the people that get them a lot. So they're looking at tornadoes and then hurricanes. But maybe more to come in the next couple of years if we get funded, or someone in the U.S. will have some concrete answers to that. We're going to have a pretty large call for that.
Are there any studies in the US that look at intentions versus the actions?
Yeah.
Because I guess a lot of the work in Australia has shown that what people say they're going to do, for example, in a fire, is very different from what they actually do.
Yes, so we do more of the survey and less of the experiment work, which is why my group does the experiment work, is to kind of fill a gap. But for example, the results I showed where there's a 50% uptake and taking, following the check local media, that was in a survey context. So is there like a certain area of this that you're interested in to actually do what the government's saying, or what's?
It's just that a lot of the stuff that we've done on intentions don't match up with when we've actually looked at a fire or an incident. Actual behaviour has been markedly different from how people imagine they might respond.
I think we usually do one or the other, so we can't actually put them side by side. I think the experiment research are trying to figure out, what's the best way to communicate to them, as opposed to what people say they're going to do. So we're kind of trying to look at, regardless of what they say they're going to do, let's figure out the best way to message this, and then we'll measure to actually evacuate or go to the shelter in place. Normally people in the U.S. don't do these types of things. So it's probably fairly similar here. When you look at preparedness rates, about 10 to 15% of the U.S. says actually have a plan, says they have a plan. You actually have one make a kit. So we're a very underprepared society. FEMA, since 2012, has really tried to put this whole community push out there. They say you're on your own for 72 hours, get prepared. So they really try to push out to the U.S. But we have research from like the American Red Cross that says that about 75% of Americans think if they post something on Facebook, then someone's going to come to their house and save them. So emergency service will see their random post on Facebook and save them. So there is a huge gap in terms of public expectations, and it's a big push in the U.S. saying, no, you're on your own, figure it out.
Your findings on the use of humour are really interesting for the zombie. Did you make any conclusions about what is a better tone? Because there's not much tone of emotion you can put into it. Words. What's better than humour?
So I will say humor comes across campaign. I'll get to your question. But we've seen, not our research, other people have seen, for example, in Egypt during the revolution, humor was the top third frame on tweets around the world. Initially, it changed over time. So humor comes up in social media a lot. A lot of people are more humorous on social media than they are on social media. So it is a very popular way people approach social media. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just you gotta, do it appropriately. I don't know if there would be a different emotional response that would be better. My recommendation would be probably to get the opinion leaders in the communities. So to get people to actually work with these. I met an expat who's in New Zealand now doing a lot of community resilience work there. And he said that he basically just works with local groups. There was like a drag race group that came and said, can we sponsor us? Yes. And then all of them handed out flyers about his community resilience group as a federal local partnership. So I think getting to the place where these people are, however you have to do that, is probably more effective than trying to be humorous online to actually get people where they are. So maybe that's finding someone on social media who's really popular in that community, so send your message out. Maybe it's literally face-to-face going to where that group of people is. But I don't think, so just being humorous is going to cut it out, just being fearful.
Yeah, it was interesting what you said about deep storytelling and that being maybe not so much a focus for social media. So that was what people say what reports to look for on social media, is that right?
So it's what journalists said that they're not using, they don't view, these 40 people we interviewed, don't view social media as deep storytelling.
Right, so that's something they look to traditional media for.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Maybe because they want their business to be alive and they want people to broadcast, so there might be a self-serving interest here.
yeah, so one thing we've just been playing around with recently, not in an emergency context, is actually the media though actually does come to us and our social media channels for the stories.
Yeah.
So even if our deep storytelling maybe doesn't have a huge impact on, you know, the broader audience, it can sway the media who then do have a big impact on the broader audience.
Yeah, and they want to do deep storytelling, which is the majority of their business, so that
Exactly.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, just not much research, but just
Yeah.
Okay, you talked at some point about whether or not people would follow through and look at imagery or mapping information.
Yeah.
Something sort of triggered for me there because there's been a commitment in Australia recently to provide better imagery and mapping information.
Yep.
That people could follow through, and I think you said that there wasn't a great response to that information being available through their readers. So just
Yeah, so in the experiments I presented today, not the ones we just wrapped up now, we tested two pretty low-tech maps. We had what we called the high version and low version. The high version said you are here, so it showed you where you are in the impact zone, and the other one did not, it just kind of showed the map area. And the high resolution map, had a more positive effect on personalizing and understanding threats. However, we just tested this again with much more savvy, higher map expert, actually find them to look really good. Lots of different maps, flashing red, light, you know, everything, the best technology, and we got no impact of maps. So we were, you know, the corporate sector didn't really want maps on these videos anyways. It's going to kill the bandwidth, but there was kind of a push. If they made a big difference, the government was very interested in adding them. It seems like no one map makes a big difference, and the map effect does not seem to be hugely impactful. We haven't fully analyzed the data, so if you email me in about a month, we're going to have a final report. And DHS always puts all of our reports on their website, so they're freely available to the public. You know, you can get more of the nuanced findings then. But definitely does not seem like maps are doing it. It might be because it's pretty low literacy maps in the U.S. So I don't know if you guys have a more high literacy map culture.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. What is it? The agency map that you produce? Like, is it just?
It's like a Google map, but it's stationary. So the wireless carriers. This is the big public right. There were no way they were going to send one out where it actually moves when you move.
Yeah.
So that probably has an effect, because if you're trying to evacuate somewhere and the map stays the same, but you're moving, I think that probably did not increase.
Did you do links?
Yes,
test links as well?
We are testing URLs to see whether, we first wanted to see would people download an app in advance, because that would be the ideal world. They would actually download the information, they already have it on their phone. And then we also wanted to test if a link was attached, they open it, because we were kind of concerned about, you know, security concerns. We haven't analyzed that data yet, so I can't tell you what the project does end 2 weeks. It usually takes about a month for everything to clear from the government. Sometimes longer.
Any more questions, or are we going to give Brooke a rest?
Could you just explain where your research is now going?
Yeah, so we're very interested in visual social media. So you can see what I said here is mostly text-based social media, and that's the majority of the research is. We're very interested in Flickr, YouTube. So how does a still photo versus a moving video, what can that have on responsiveness and recovery? So that's a huge area. I'm also doing work with the Department of Defense, looking at how to get people to volunteer to help the government prepare for disasters. So very interested in the kind of the motivating factor to get people to voluntarily help the government prepare their communities for disasters. Some pretty cool findings there. One of them being that if you frame it as civic engagement and patriotism, people are more likely to do it than if you pay them in the US. So the cash incentive works less well than the actual patriotism, unless you're an emergency manager, and the cash incentive works better. So a little counterintuitive there, but I think that's some promising findings. So that's another large area of research, is false alert and warnings. But I think mainly looking at the messaging. That seems to be the big gap in the research. We do a lot of corporate crisis communication in the US, so we have a pretty large body of research on how to message if you're a corporation to get people to go back and buy your products after a disaster or crisis. We know a lot less about the emergency services side, so we're really interested in kind of the messaging of that and how to make that more effective.
Terrific. Please join me in thanking Brooke for a fantastic presentation. And with that, we'll wrap up today, but please feel free to, we have the room for as long as we like, or at least for a fair while. If you want to stay, have a chat, coffee, bickies, and the like, please do.
New word from the nation's top scientists on the zombie virus that appeared just 2 weeks ago. They released information saying that the symptoms to watch for are aggression, foaming from the mouth, deterioration of motor skills, and an unbelievable hunger.